All right, I think we're live. I'm Nason Tackett with Here Technologies.
Max Solkowski. How y'all doing out there? We're calling you we are streaming to you from Huntsville, Alabama, our headquarters of Here Technologies and NASA and all kinds of stuff.
We got the Space and Rocket Center just down the street with the big Saturn V rocket. So. Yes. Anyhow, today we're going to be talking to you about the HearBack Pro, what it is, where you would use it, how you would use it. So the HearBack Pro was basically an answer to all of the feedback that we had received over the years from people that had used the original HearBack system, the 8-channel. And we basically took emails, phone calls, talking to people at the show, what they liked about it, what they didn't like about it, also what they liked about some of the competitors out there. And we tried to build what we thought was the perfect headphone monitoring system, which is the HearBack Pro. So it has since made many changes over the years per suggestions that we've received from people, but originally, it was 2015 when it came out. Yep. It was basically just like the original, where you had a knob per channel. That was one of the big things that people wanted to see, was just the ability to quickly grab a knob, not have to scroll through menus, not have to push buttons to get to your channel, just be able to, as you're playing your instrument, be able to grab a knob and turn. So what we did was we added 8 more channels, so we went from 8 channels to 16 channels. We added the ability to pan any of those channels, and we added presets. And also, one of the really cool things is the intercom, so that way musicians can talk to each other. So since then, what we did was going to some of the shows, showing the HearBack Pro to people. We actually took a lot of suggestions and input, and we released firmware updates that added new features to it, because what we wanted to do with the Pro was create a platform that we could expand and update, so that we weren't stuck with whatever we had come up with, because we knew that there's always new protocols coming out and new things that people want to see. So that was one of the big things for us, was to make it to where it was really easy to expand and update. So basically, with the Pro, you've got a hub, and this is where all of your mixers home run to. They connect back with a Cat 6 network cable, and all of your audio comes in here. So on the back of it, this thing is modular. You've got 4 card slots. When we initially released this, we had analog inputs only. So you could come in with 8 channels into one card, 8 channels into another with a DB25 cable, and then we had our network card that the mixers plug into. It could support up to 8 mixers. So since then, we have released tons of new cards. We've got the AES EBU card for digital. We've got a Dante card. We've got a Wave SoundGrid card. We have an ADAT card. We now have just released a MADI card. We have an analog output card. Mm-hmm. We have a virtual mixer card, which is basically a mixer in a card format. Mm-hmm. So very, very flexible and expandable system. And before I get into how it works, we'll talk a little bit about where you would use this system. Basically, what you want to do is, if the 8-channel system is not enough for you, or if you need something other than analog audio or ADAT that the original HearBack system, or its direct replacement, which is the Octo, both of those support analog audio and ADAT. So if you want to do a different flavor like AES or Dante, Wave SoundGrid, MADI, one of those things, and possibly even some future cards that we're looking into. That's the really cool thing about this, is that something new comes along, we can just build a card for it. So that would be one reason why you'd want to use the Pro in place of the original system, and of course the number of channels. So like I said a minute ago, the Pro was originally designed with 16 channels. Actually, since its initial release in 2015, we've done a firmware update, which was the V5 firmware, that took it to 128 channels. So now it's 32 channels per hub. So you can, with one hub, you can do 32 channels. If you want to do 64, you add another hub. 96 channels, you can add another hub. 128 channels, you can have up to four hubs stacked for multiple inputs. And basically, with the new firmware, you can pick from any of those channels. You can actually mix all 128 of them if you really want to. But you can really see that the Pro has a lot more to offer than the original system. So it really just depends on what your needs are as far as the type of format that you want to bring the audio into the system, and also the number of channels that you want to have access to, as well as the intercom. Actually, that's another feature. So if you want the ability to be able to talk to the talent, have the talent talk to each other, then that intercom is really a very valuable tool.
The intercom actually was an afterthought as it was being designed, and we thought, well, we've got some room here, but what about an intercom? Well, okay, give it a shot, and it just ended up being one of the most popular things on it. The whole idea behind the Pro and its versatility is we can just drop right into whatever you're doing. In other words, if you're natively running Dante, well, fine, we're put in the Dante card and we're there. Another thing that Nason built into the Pro is it's not stuck at a single sample rate like 48K, that type of thing. We can support anything from 44.1 all the way up to 192, just depending on whatever input card you have. Like some of them won't. Like the ADAT card, of course, is stuck at 48. That's the nature of ADAT.
And you may think that's ridiculous, but the point of that is not that you need to have a 192 kilohertz sample rate for your headphone monitoring system. It's that if you want to record and your gear is running at 192, then we want to be able to talk to that natively. We don't want to limit you to 48K. So
right, so we can just drop in wherever you need us. And another thing to look at is with V5 and all, you're not limited to just Dante. Say you have two hubs, you could have one Dante hub and maybe one hub with some analog inputs.
They can actually, you can have
they
multiple
mix.
flavors coming in. Only note on that is just make sure that if they, so they just need to make sure that the clock is in the same domain. So if you're coming in with Dante and AES at the same time, you just got to make sure that you've got word clock synchronized between those two different digital domains.
And as a matter of fact, we make a word clock card.
Oh, that's right. We've got so many cards that we can hardly keep up with them ourselves now.
And it just slides into the back of the hub so that you can actually do that and not worry about it. So.
But as far as using the system, you basically want to come out of your console with whatever format makes sense into the hub. And it's basically kind of a star topology where your audio is coming into the hub and then it branches out from there to all of your mixers. It is a home run from every mixer using Cat6 cabling back to the hub. The reason for that is because the headphone amplifier in here is 5 watts of power. You can't daisy chain from mixer to mixer. You've got to have a home run to have that much current. When you compare our headphone circuit to many others on the market, a lot of them are in the milliwatts. We're 5 watts. And the reason for that is because most headphones are in the 32 ohm region impedance-wise, but there are many headphones out there that are 80, 250, God forbid 600 ohms. And the higher you go with that impedance, the more power you're going to have to drive that. So if you take a pair of 250 ohm headphones and you try plugging it into some of those other headphone amps out there, they really struggle to be able to even get the volume up to a reasonable level, especially if you're performing or playing drums. So having the 5 watts really lets us power basically any pair of headphones. And depending on what impedance they are, you could even power multiple headphones if they're some of the higher impedance. So anyways, the idea is that you're giving every musician the ability to control their mix. So they're not having to yell back at the sound engineer and say, hey, can you turn up the drums or turn down the bass? They can basically make their own mix and make themselves happy. So it's
Instant gratification.
instant gratification. It makes everybody happier. It gives everybody, the control. But so I guess at this point, I'll get into a little bit of the using
Yeah, sure.
of the mixer. So
And I'll step out this way.
before we switch over to the document camera, I guess one of the things I'll point out, when we first came out with the Pro Mixer, we have basically your 16 knobs there, and you've got to label them. We have this paper overlay that's on here where you can write with a pen or a fine tip Sharpie, or you can write directly on the mixer's surface using a grease pen, and it'll actually completely erase off with a pencil eraser, which is really cool. But that gets to be pretty time consuming, especially for like recording studios where you're having to label 20 mixers and you're changing sessions pretty regularly. So recently what we had come out with is the digital overlay, which is a piece that actually fits on top of the mixer and has little screens above each knob. So I just wanted to mention that because we're going to switch over to the document camera here real quick. And what you're going to see is a Hearback Pro mixer with an overlay. Now, okay, I guess I'm still seeing the feed from 14 seconds ago. I keep forgetting that we got a latency. So what we've got here is the overlay, which it mounts to an existing mixer. So if this weren't here, you would basically just see the Pro Mixer without the labels. And this has got it's actually V6 firmware to support the overlay. But as far as the functionality, as far as being able to route channels and do submixing, all of that came out with our V5 firmware. And what we've got here is we went in and we actually assigned different things to these knobs, and that's something that came out with V5, so that your stereo channels, for example, they don't have to take up two knobs. When the system first came out, you could link two channels together. Everything that came in, the 16 channels on the hub showed up just a 1-to-1 mapping here. So if you had a stereo pair, then it took up two knobs. We did have the ability to link them so that when you turned one knob, they both tracked together. But with V5, we introduced the ability to put stereo on one knob. So you could have a mono, which is what bass is here. And you notice that there aren't little lines next to bass. That means it's mono. On drums, you've got these little lines on the left and right. That indicates that that's actually a stereo channel. And I'll show you here in just a minute, you can even do submixes, which actually puts a little box around it. Now, we've got this hooked up, so if I turn up some levels, you should be able to hear what I'm doing here. I'm going to bring up the master a little bit, and I'm going to bring up the drums. And we've got some tracks playing here. So you got some drums. I'm going to add in a little bit of bass. Put in a little bit of synth, some lead guitar. We don't need too much guitar. Guitar player may want to have himself up really, really loud, but so you kind of get the idea. Very easy to use, and basically, once you get your levels set, if you hit this pan button here, which is the first button, you can get into adjusting, whether you want to move the bass to the left or to the right. And then if you hit it again, now this is a new feature with the V5 firmware. This is width control. You can choose how wide you want your stereo. If I go down to 1 dot, that's going to be mono. If I go the other direction, that is reverse stereo. So it's reversing the left and right, which is really a cool thing to do if you're on stage and the engineers set your left and right up from their perspective, but your perspective is completely backwards. So you've got the ability to change the width there. You've got an auxiliary input, which is the second button here. What that does is that lets you come in with either a XLR microphone input that's up here on the top of the mixer. You actually have to lift it up to see it. It's got phantom power. You can use that as a ambient microphone, or you can use that as the intercom mic. There's also a 1/8 inch input that's stereo. You can come in from a metronome. You can come in from an iPhone. And both of those inputs double as an auxiliary that you can bring up on your own. Only you'll hear that. Or if you hit intercom, you're broadcasting whatever comes in up here, whether it's a microphone or whether it's a line input. Everybody that has a Hearback Pro mixer is going to hear it unless you've gone into the settings and disabled it. So that's something we'll get into in another live stream that we do, is some of the more advanced features. Right now we're just touching on the basics. So going over from there, of course you got your master volume here. Then you've got a preset button. Now the way that we've got the firmware, we actually made a change. When the Pro system first came out, we had it to where if you wanted to save, you had to push and hold. The light would start flashing and then you would let go to save it. Or if you kept holding it, it would, and actually that function still works. If I push it and hold it, it starts flashing. If you keep holding it, you could pick a different place that you want to store it to. But one thing that we changed per request from people was that we now save whenever we go to another preset. So pushing quickly just jumps to another preset, but we save what we were doing before we jump to the next one. So you've got 4 presets to work with. If you need to save more settings than that, that's something that you can do from the app, which I have open here on my iPhone. It will work on any iOS device. Actually, Apple just recently opened that up to where the apps can run on Mac OS. So we'll be releasing that version here pretty soon. So it'll look just like it does here, but it'll actually run on OS X. So the next button over is the intercom. If I push it, this lets me take whatever I'm coming in on my auxiliary input, sends it out to everybody. So if I go to another mixer and push it, you can see here the light blinks. So that means I got incoming intercom. You can have up to 4 people talking simultaneously on intercom. So up to 4 people can have a conversation. If you need to latch it, there's a trick to it. If you push it quickly, it latches that intercom. Hit it again to unlatch it. Now over here next to the mixer, I'll show you real quick. This is our iOS app. This was something that came along later. We didn't have this originally, but a couple years after we introduced the Pro, we decided to do an app for it. The way that works, if you guys want to switch back over, I'll show on the back here. On the back of the hub, over on the main card where you've got your power inputs, you actually have a redundant power input. There's a bus in and out. That's how you stack these hubs together. The very top hub, if you have multiple hubs, it'll be the very first one. You connect the H-bus input to a wireless router, and that's how you get access to the system with an app. So you just basically have to provide yourself a Wi-Fi access point. And right in here, we're actually using a Airport Extreme to get access to that. And once you connect up, that's all you got to do. It'll automatically discover your hub and your devices. This is what you'll see right here. And at the top, you've got your hub and sources. You've got some different meters there. You've got your names. That's actually how you name all your tracks that show up on the screens. You can choose whether things are globally mono or stereo. And then you've got your different mixers. So touch one of those mixers, we can see, we can adjust. You can even choose what's on each channel. I could come in here and I could assign another channel, or I could even put a submix. And actually you can see that's what a submix looks like. It puts a little box around it. That submix can be edited on the mixer. We'll get into how do you do that in the advanced streaming class that we do on this. Or you can make the adjustments on the app as well. So you basically have full control of your mixer, and really and then some, because there's actually other things that you can get into here. You can name your mixer here. There's booth mixer. That's what's showing up there. You've got the ability to swipe, and you can send the mix to another mixer. You can get into identifying the mixer, grouping, which we'll get into in the advanced class. You can send text messages if you've got the new overlay. And then under settings, there's quite a bit of stuff you can do under here. Some of the different features, LED brightness. You can actually lock different features out if you want to restrict people on a per mixer basis. So really, there's a lot of stuff packed in there, and the app is free. You just need to provide the access point. So that's really a great thing to give, for sure, to have your engineer or your producer, but also if you want to use the virtual mixer, which is basically this entire mixer that is put into a card that slides into the hub. And then basically you can control that mixer from the app, and it has no knobs. Your control's completely from there, and we actually have it right here. So that's it. It's basically just a left and right balanced output. That is really cool too for recording studios. We have a lot of them that put one of these in and then take the output into their console, route it to the monitors, so that way if somebody talks on the intercom, they can hear them in the control room. And you can even come in that auxiliary input right there. It's a little 1/8" input, and use that as a talkback mic from the control room. So you can trigger that either using a foot switch that we sell, that's an accessory, or you can trigger it from the app and broadcast from the control room back to all the talent. So really, really flexible. All of these different features have been added over the last 5 years that we've had the Pro system, based on feedback that we've received from people like you, either from talking to you at trade shows or email, Facebook, you name it. So did I miss anything, Max? Is there anything else we want to mention?
Pretty much covered it all. One question that I get a lot. I'm the guy on the phone, or I'm the guy on the emails, by the way. If you contact us, you're getting a hold of me. So nice to meet y'all. One thing I always get, and we mentioned this at the beginning of this, do we daisy chain mixers? In none of our stuff, whether it be the Octo, the original, or the Pro, do we daisy chain. Now, Nason mentioned that we got power and everything going down the Cat 5. The other reason we don't do that is when you daisy chain, that means you got to get power from somewhere. So you've already got a Cat 5 running through your live room or wherever you are. You don't need to have an AC outlet for a wall wart for that.
Well,
so
one thing you can do.
But one thing you can do is, this is the ProNet, which is just a box, an aluminum box, looks kind of like a Countryman Direct box, that is our network card that's in the hub that's just in this box. So literally you can take this guy, have one cable, either the H-bus out or just out of a mixer out on the hub, take this guy up to 500 feet, throw it in the middle of the live room, and break out from there. So it's just really easy.
And you can even daisy chain these together.
Yeah, you can just keep going forever with these things. So we just tried to make it as simple and as seamless as possible. Simplicity is the key.
Desktop software.
So desktop software, that is software that we've got for updating. Well, you have two different pieces. We've got the firmware update software, and that is how you do updates to the mixers, and that's a desktop piece of software. You've also got the ability. There's the hub configurator, and it allows you to go in and name the channels and also choose what's mono and stereo. You can do that from the app. There's several ways to do everything. So there are a couple pieces of software that you might want to check out if you're not aware of them. We've got a question over Dante. What is the I/O count? So we have a limit of 32 channels per hub. So in a hub, you can do 32 channels on a Dante card. I'll make a note that originally our Dante card, when it first came out, I guess it came out in 2016 or 17, it was originally 16 channels. So we've since increased that to 32 channels with the V5 firmware, and you can do 32 channels into a hub. Now, if you want to do 64 channels, you'll need another hub, another Dante card. You can do 32 more. If you want to do more than that, you could do 96 Dante channels with a third hub, or you can do 128 Dante channels with a fourth hub. So you basically keep stacking these hubs up, and you get more and more channels. We'll get into it in the advanced class. You can have access to all 128 channels in 8 banks that you can see 16 channels at a time in 8 different banks, or you can submix some of those down to make it easier, which I recommend doing. Who in the heck wants to go through 128 channels? It's better to build submixes that you then just have a top level control over the drums, the choir, things like that. So any other questions?
We had another question. Basically, with Dante, if you have, say, 32 channels, what happens to the sample rate? In other words, at what point do you, if you're running at, say, 192 at Dante, I believe. Okay, yeah, if you're running at 192, when does your sample rate have to cut?
So you can do 32 channels up to 96 K sampling rate. When you go to 192, you're gonna drop down, and it's a limitation of Dante. It's not a limitation of the Pro system. You're going to drop down to 16 channels. So if you want to run at 176.4 or 192 kilohertz, then you'll have 16 channels per hub. But you could stack another hub to get 16 more, another hub to get 16 more, and so on, up to 64 channels at 192 kilohertz sample rate. So that's the only time that you're going to lose channel count, is when you go above 96K. Cool. Any other questions we got from people? Yeah, send us questions. We were expecting more people to. Oh yeah,
Remember,
throughout the show, not just now.
Yeah.
You can always
hit us on the chats. For heaven's sake, we're here, and you've got our email addresses. It's easy to find us. Just heartechnologies.com.
Well, we've also got Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, email. I'll give you Max's cell phone number if you want. You can call that any time.
The whole world has it.
Thank you guys, everybody, for tuning in and watching us. We're going to be going live twice a day, 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. Central Time. So come check out some of our other live shows. Thanks.
See you
guys.